Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Critters, where we live stream every Sunday morning at usually 9:30 a.m. Eastern on the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page. And once in a while, we will live stream at 9 a.m. like we are this morning. And we do that when we have a guest on. And this morning, we have a guest, and I will introduce her shortly. I know that a lot of people have sent me messages about today's topic that could not attend, and they asked if there's a replay, if there will be a replay available. And when I live stream on Coffee with the Critters on the Facebook page, the live stream is always available immediately after. And it's also uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to catch all of our episodes of Coffee with the Critters, the best way to do that is to join our email newsletter list, because we will send out an email with a link to the latest episode. And I will show you, you can join our email newsletter list right here on our Facebook page by clicking, and it's there somewhere. It's right at the top. You can join that way, or you can go to the Animal Behavior Center's website, which is theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. There you will see a list of our services. You will see what we're all about, the work that we do. So for those that are new, good morning. My name is Laura Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we live stream to animal lovers and caregivers all over the world. We do that through our membership services, which you can find at the top of our website. And like I said, that is theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. You can also, if you have questions, I answer all of my emails myself. Sometimes it takes me some time because I get a lot every day. And that is Laura, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. So what we do here at the Animal Behavior Center is we educate people through our live streams how to empower the lives of animals and the people that care for them. So I give step-by-step guidance to people working with different species of animals. I love to focus on the exotics because I have a lot of friends who focus on domestic dogs, cats, other common animals as companion animals. I like to work with the animals that are undomesticated, just to show the technicalities and the details and the challenges in working with applied behavior analysis with animals. So also on our Facebook page and our website, you can find events. I just confirmed a new event yesterday that I will be traveling to and presenting a workshop in Columbus, Ohio, at the Ohio Wildlife Rehabilitators Association. That'll be the first Friday in November. I will also be in Seattle. I believe it's September 24th. Oh, right there it is. September 24th and 25th, giving a workshop. And there's one more that we need to get added to the site, but I will let you know. You can find that on our events page here on the Facebook page or on our website. All righty. So I start each week with a recap of what I've done the week before. So for those of you that have followed our Facebook page, the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page, I also post on LinkedIn, and our lovely marketer, Therese Copawoda, posts it on Instagram. They know I have been working with a red ruff lemur, desensitizing it to the sight of a crate, the feel of the crate, going into the crate. So when the keepers told me that when they first put the crate in with the red ruff lemur, he ran to the top of his enclosure and started vocalizing and showing signs of fear. And I understand what signs of fear look like from a red ruff lemur, specifically this one, because I train him. So that, and I've learned that through target training him. I identifying reinforcers. And with identifying reinforcers, I have identified aversives. So when I first start working with an animal, I observe, identify the reinforcers, identify the aversives, eliminate the aversives. If one of those events is an aversive that the animal needs, then I need to start training it to counter condition any past experience, and that would be the crate. So I'll show you a couple of photos. Here is, this was, I don't know how many training sessions I did with him. I would say probably at this point, 6 or 7 of them. I'm trying to train him every day, but it's really hard for me to get to him every day. But with our training sessions do not need to be long. But the repetition is, I find what is very effective. A lot of things are very effective, but if I can just train him for 3 minutes at a time, numerous times a day, that would be great. Sometimes I take a 5-minute break, go back in. Here he is going into the crate, and this is the photo I took a couple of days ago where he is in the crate. As of last night, I am cueing him in the crate. So now the crate is a cue to run to it for him, what I've observed, versus running away from it. So as soon as I set that crate down, boom, boom, he's on the table waiting for the door to be opened. So behavior doesn't lie, and using applied behavior analysis, using observable, measurable events, studying behavior. I am now getting him to go to the back, turn around, stand at the front, and waiting until I ask him to do something else. And in this photo, you can tell he's standing there waiting by looking at his front left paw. His paw is not in motion, and he is looking at me for the cue what to do next. So as soon as I'm done with this live stream today, I will be out working with him again today for at least another 2 times. So without further ado, I want to bring on, how do I say this? I want to say it's one of my favorite guests because I have a lot of guests that are my favorite. But when Samantha Sarin, I'm bringing you on, Samantha. When Samantha Sarin and I talk, we've talked plenty of times before on the phone, and the other one was the other day. We talked for an hour. I mean, to me, it's like ear candy listening to you and having these conversations and bouncing things back and forth. And sometimes I ask you, am I on the right track? Am I correct? Like I was asking you the other day. This is my observation. So welcome, Samantha. Thanks for coming on here again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into today's topic, we were discussing the other day on the phone. We're like, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, and it doesn't take us long. And I really want to stop. I want to hurry up and read you bio because I know this next hour is just going to fly by. So we were discussing a couple different topics, and one of the ones I brought up, which is what a recent podcast was in the memberships on, was negative reinforcement. So many times I only know it from the animal community, people are thinking negative reinforcement, it's like a big red flag and a big X and don't even go there. So today's topic's going to be on the effective use of negative reinforcement. And I want to read Samantha's bio so you know why this is very important for you to be listening to today. So Samantha Sarin is a board certified behavior analyst. Samantha began in the human services field over 15 years ago, working with child and adult learners with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism, in a variety of settings. She is especially interested in environmental modifications and natural environment functional analysis. She is currently employed with Gamut Early Intervention Services. Did I say that correctly? Okay. And serves as an adjunct faculty at Rider University. She has been board certified for 10 years and an animal lover since birth. Her first word was EO for Leo, her cat growing up. She is a fur mom to 5 cats and 1 dog. So welcome, Samantha. Welcome back. I did bring up a couple of photos that you sent me. So I had met you online. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was you watching a Facebook live stream, and then you eventually came to one of my workshops. And that's what this picture is. So I remember when this picture was taken, when you sent it to me this morning, and I'm sure I have it as well. It's just buried somewhere in my camera. I remember when you came, it was just like, I was so excited to have you here. And then I'm not sure if you came for the workshop or if you came just to meet Rocky.
It was both. It was both. Sure. I came to meet you. That was I remember pulling up and I was like, there should have been like that dramatic slow music playing and like me running up to the center like, Laura. Like, get her out of here. She's not staying the whole time. I was so excited though.
And I was excited to have you here as well. You sent me a third photo, but I've uploaded it, but I'm going to wait to talk about it in case it's the picture of you first petting Rocky.
Okay. Okay.
You and I talked about that the other day on the phone. Do you want to talk about that today?
Yeah.
Because it has everything to do with using negative reinforcement effectively. Okay. So I'll hold on to that photo and I'll show it during our live stream. So we've got a lot of people attending. Morning, Tim, Pam, Miriam, Eva, Daniela, Shelly, Pat, Missa, Ruby, Ray, Iris. I like to read everybody's names as they come on. Susie, Maggie, Kathy, June. So I could keep going. Let's go ahead and get started on our topic, because when we started talking about this the other day, I guess let's first define what negative reinforcement is, and let me know if you want to add anything on to this. Any event that happens after a behavior that causes that behavior to maintain or increase due to a stimulus being removed from the environment. And normally that stimulus, do I want to say normally, or sometimes can be an aversive, or is always an aversive?
It would be an aversive stimulus.
Okay. And sometimes when we say these things, people using everyday behavior with animals, that definition would just go boom over their head. What the hell does that mean? So I often say, think of it as escape avoidance behavior.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you started with that. I was actually thinking that was where we would start too, because I was surprised when you brought this up when we were talking the other day to hear some of the reactions that you've had in the animal training world to negative reinforcement, some of the negative reactions that you've had to negative reinforcement, because with ABA with people, we use negative reinforcement all the time. And there's not sort of that sort of gross, like, oh no, that's bad, reaction to it.
Yeah. And I started telling you a lot of feedback or kickback I get in the animal community. I know I was given a presentation in Montreal, and I started talking about negative reinforcement and how I use it. And a couple of the people in the workshop were appalled. And they're like, why would you even use negative reinforcement? And I was like, what am I missing? What are you talking about? And they were like, you should stay as far away from that as possible. And I told them, I was like, some of the animals I work with, I can't. Some of the situations I find it beneficial. And a lot of times when I'm working with the animal, I'm sitting there going through my head, what am I seeing? What am I doing? Can I avoid this? Is this a positive experience for the animal? If it's not a positive experience for the animal, how can I modify this? What are all my approaches? So do you want to mention something?
So I think in going with just explaining the definition for folks, I think a good way in layman's terms to put it is, so I've attended trainings before where they say that there's, like 2 functions of behavior. There's 4 functions of behavior, but for simplifying it, they say there's two functions of behavior, and you either do something to get something you want or to get away from something you don't want, right? So if you look at it in those terms, the getting away from something you don't want is the negative reinforcement piece. So if you're thinking of, I think one of the key things that we need to focus on today is getting away from sort of the social connotation of negative reinforcement. People hear negative and they think bad. And then also we're not promoting necessarily negative reinforcement over positive reinforcement. That's not what we're doing here. We're looking at it as a component of a treatment package, and valuing the utility that it can have, for sure. I think one of the other things that I wanted to get into that we make sure we talk about or focus on is to be clear about what behavior we're talking about, right? So when we were going through some examples on the phone the other day, depending on how you look at a scenario or what behavior specifically you're focusing on, it could be there's different contingencies at play. So one side of a scenario could be, that there's a positive reinforcement dynamic, and another on the other end of it, it could be that there's negative reinforcement. And that classic example of the kid throwing a tantrum in Target for candy, right? So the kid's flipping out, and the parents like, here, and they give them the candy. So if you're looking at in terms of the child's behavior was positively reinforced. In terms of the parents' behavior, their behavior was negatively reinforced. They gave the kid the candy, the kid stopped tantruming. So it depends on how you look at situations. We need to focus on the literal semantics of it.
Sorry,
right?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Apparently my watch is trying to participate in the live stream. Okay, all right. We have to make sure that we're just being clear and paying attention to the language and what we're talking about, and to try to not get caught up in necessarily how things sound if you're looking at it in that way.
Yeah, so to go off your example of the kid screaming for candy, in the dog world, or the animal world, I'm just thinking of a dog because a lot of people have dogs. If the dog starts barking as soon as you get home, if you don't want the dog barking, identify what the reinforcer is behind the dog barking. If the dog's barking for your attention and you pet it to get it to stop barking, then, like you said, the behavior of the dog barking is positively reinforced. The behavior, well, from the dog's perspective, the dog got what it wants. The person gave the petting or the attention to avoid the behavior of the dog barking. So the behavior of petting was negatively reinforced. So, and we talked about this the other day. A lot of times people, like I said, I don't know if I'm using the term correct, clumping behavior. There's at least two behaviors that just happened in both scenarios, that you gave and that I gave. And sometimes people clump those all together. But when you break it down, you can better understand positive and negative reinforcement.
When I used to tutor in college, this is going to throw me back. This is signs that I knew I was a behavior analyst before I was a behavior analyst. I used to tutor Gen Psych in college, and everyone would get tripped up on positive, negative, reinforcement, punishment. And I used to just draw the Punnett square from biology and map it out that way. And I think the other way I like to explain it is like to think of it like math, like positive and negative. You're thinking of it like math. So plus or minus, it doesn't mean good or bad. And again, shifting away from that, when you hear reinforcement or positive, you think good, and negative and punishment, you think bad. It's not that way. It's all about what behavior are we talking about in relation to those principles. So if a behavior is increasing, it's being reinforced. If it's decreasing, it's being punished. It is that simple. It is that simple.
And it's positive because something was added, and it's negative because something was withdrawn.
Correct.
Yep. There's the four quadrants that I give to people as well, defining reinforcement, punishment, and what each one means. Because, and like I tell people, just start by understanding reinforcement and punishment. Just start by understanding that. And then once you understand that, then break it down to positive, negative reinforcement, positive, negative punishment. So where do we want to begin on some examples? I have a couple key things here from our conversation the other day I want to not forget to talk about. Do you have something to say, or do you want to start with an example, and I can want me to follow it up with my example that I was talking about with the Harris Hawk?
We can, yeah. So we could definitely get into that. The other one that I thought that was good that came up was when we were talking about teaching a sit for a dog.
Oh, here we go.
I thought that was a good discussion.
Yeah.
We can make some good points there.
The only reason I say, oh, here we go, is because it's going to get down to the nitty gritty.
Where's your moderator? Where's Rocky? Bring him in for moderating.
So we were talking about a sit the other day, and say we're wanting the behavior of a dog sitting. Do you want me to start it, or do you want to start it?
You're good.
Okay. And I believe it was you that brought up the example, or maybe I started, and however it went, was if we want a dog to sit, and we put the dog is standing, and we put our hand on its rump and apply pressure. So the dog starts to sit to avoid the pressure on the rump.
So I had to look up examples, because again, when you said that people are so opposed to negative reinforcement, I was very surprised. So I started Googling like what's going on with this. And one of the examples that came up was this one with teaching a dog to sit using negative reinforcement. And both of us agreed like we wouldn't teach it that way, but that would technically be an example of using negative reinforcement. What we then got into that I think is important is the nature of the aversive stimulus, right? So when looking at teaching a dog to sit, a person putting their hand on the back of the dog and pushing down is not a natural stimulus, right? Like that doesn't just exist in the environment. That's something that the person is adding and going out of their way to do to then create, this MO for the dog to sit so that they can escape that pressure. So that I think is what is another part that's really important to look at when it comes to negative reinforcement is the sort of, how arbitrary or how unnatural is that aversive stimulus? Because we were talking about the aversive stimuli are everywhere. They're part of life, right? So we have to be able to teach how to deal with aversive stimuli, or we're doing a disservice to whoever we're working with. You can't avoid everything, right? So you need to come up with ways that it's appropriate to avoid things or appropriate to escape from certain situations. And I think that keeping those aversive stimuli as natural and realistic as possible is important for using negative reinforcement correctly.
And I think this might be a good point because you brought up that I had forgotten about. You had brought up how I was showing you how I asked Rocky to be pet.
Yes. I love that. It's so much fun.
So, since you brought it up, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Do you want to explain it, or do you want me to explain it?
No, I can. So I was talking about how you have this really cool way for Rocky to decide if he wants to be pet, and you tell someone to put their hand to him, and then if he moves his body or his head to you, he's saying, yeah, go ahead and pet me. If he doesn't, we interpret that as he does not want to be pet. So there's a negative reinforcement contingency at play there, right? So when he does not move towards you, when he stays still, that behavior is indicating, no, I don't want the pet. So he's saying no. So it's another example, I guess, of a good use of negative reinforcement is teaching choice and teaching. For people, it's so much more obvious because we talk. There's so much verbal behavior there, so it's very easy to see when someone asks for something they don't want, or for something to be changed, or for like, hey, get away from me. it's very obvious. It's less obvious with animals because they don't have that same language that we do. So you have to look at, how their language presents behaviorally. And that's what's going on here with Rocky. You're giving him that choice and you're allowing him to escape from what would be an unpleasant experience. If he doesn't want to be pet and he gets pet, that would be unpleasant for him.
Yep. And so you hit the nail on the head, management through teaching choice. And that's exactly, in my field of work with animals, that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm giving them choice. So when I first adopted Rocky, most people know he's the mascot of the Animal Behavior Center because it was professionally advised that he be put to sleep. And that's when I went back to school studying applied behavior analysis for Rocky. And it was only for Rocky. And now it's for animals all over the world. But that's what I did for Rocky. I mean, one of the behavior issues he had, one of the plethora of behavior issues he had was running, lunging, attacking. Well, what does attacking look like? Biting, deep, hard, blood, stitches. And that way is why it was professionally advised he be put to sleep. So what I learned through, I was negatively reinforced to search for more information, to avoid the behavior of this being the solution for a behavior concern. And then I just realized, man, so many animals are being put down for people unknowingly reinforcing undesired behaviors. And that is why the shelters are overflowing. So I wanted to teach, I was like, I need to understand what no looks like from Rocky. So I incorporated choice. And this if I'm holding him, this means, and I go like this is like, can I pet? And if he moves in, it's his choice of saying yes. If he moves away, that means no. So then my behavior of petting or touching him is negatively reinforced. Yep. And it's all by his choice. And through knowing and doing better, through understanding behavior, he is probably, I can say, the sweetest animal we have here. But what that means is now he enjoys being picked up. He says yes more often, and I'm always paying attention to when he says no. And a way to tell an animal, and that's why he's tattooed on my arm, but one way you can feel a bird is not comfortable is this tension on your arm. If you feel this tension, it may not necessarily mean no, but it means I'm not comfortable. Something just happened in the environment that I'm not comfortable with, and it's my job to identify what that is.
That's it. That's the communication piece there.
Yep. And training is communication, and that's exactly why I do what I do.
I was thinking, I've been thinking since we talked the other day. Not surprisingly.
Imagine that.
Not surprisingly. But, just looking at desensitization, there's negative reinforcement involved with desensitization, right? And I think another thing that we want to make sure that we touch base on is that with using negative reinforcement, you're also always looking to increase skills in terms of tolerance, like self-soothing, so those sorts of abilities. So if I'm using negative reinforcement, so I'm teaching someone how to get away from something that they don't like or that they don't want, at the same time going to be working on either helping them to better tolerate that thing or teaching them a way that they can, with something perhaps in the environment, lessen the intensity or severity of that stimulus. I brought up homework. So a lot of the learners that I work with have homework, we're talking about youth. And we acknowledge, that societally it's important for children to go to school and be educated. And a part of that is homework. So that's, for some kids, a very aversive stimulus. But we recognize that it's an important one that they need to be able to deal with. So that would be a naturally existing stimulus. I didn't, sit here on a Tuesday and think, oh, I'm going to make up homework and give it to this kid and have them do it because, that's on my treatment plan, my treatment plan. Homework exists in our society. Again, we recognize that a student that goes to school and receives an education and participates in their education is more likely to be successful down the road. So there's a benefit to them being able to tolerate this aversive stimulus. And we want to make sure that we're working on those skills to make them able to tolerate that at the same time as we're teaching them ways of getting away from it or getting out of doing it. So it's not just we're teaching, oh, I don't want to do my homework. Cool, no problem. And then that's that.
Yeah. And I wish we all knew how to do better versus pairing homework with being an aversive. And like you said, the children need this for a better future. And with you talking about homework made me think of this right here. So, and you were talking about negative reinforcement and how, like even in this example of teaching Red, desensitizing him to the crate, he's telling me no when he's not comfortable. If he turns around and darts out that door, which he did yesterday because an animal beside him made a loud noise and it scared him, and boom, he ran out of that crate. And I was like, darn it, that was going inside the crate, and I had nothing to do with it. It was out of my control. But like homework, I want to make his future, I want to make this Red Ruff's lemur's future better. And if he only knew the end intention for why I want him to get in the crate, because I'm going to transfer him to another room where he has all this ability to run, jump, all the stuff where I know he is going to be empowered and learn so many skills for his future. But when he turns around and comes out of that crate, he's telling me he's not comfortable in talking about negative and positive reinforcement. But when he goes back into the crate, I'm going to make it as positive as possible. So it's for his future. The homework's for the future of the children. We discussed a couple of different examples as well. And I love hearing your examples of how you work with this with children. And a lot of people will, they used to say back when I had our events at the Animal Behavior Center every year, why? Because I brought Joel Vidovic, BCBA, to speak at one of my events. And they're like, he doesn't work with animals. Why is he here? And I'm just like, listen, just sit down and listen, because what people have in common with one another is dealing with other people, living, working with other people. And that is what Joel drove home. And then I stood up right after him talking about how it works in the animal world, and it made it more relevant. And I think that's why you're such a I know that's why you're such a popular guest here on Coffee with the Critters, because you're talking about everyday people examples and how this works. It is behavior. Absolutely.
And I say homework because that's with kids, but I could just as well be talking about work for adults.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. So we unknowingly...
Not everybody loves what they do every day, Laura.
Right. We were talking about that the other day. Like, there's negative reinforcement all around us, and some of it is uncontrollable. And I gave the example, some people don't enjoy their work, but yet they continue to go. Why do you continue to go? Your behavior of going to work is being negatively reinforced because you're escaping, avoiding not getting that paycheck or the amount of that paycheck. So the behavior of your going to work is maintaining or increasing. So there's the reinforcement, and the negative is escape, avoiding not being paid.
Yeah, things that go along with not being paid, not having resources. And
right, exactly. You don't get a paycheck, you have less choice in your future. Good example. Do Do you
Yeah,
want me
that's
to go?
one where again we could go look at it both ways, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of receiving pay, we're talking positive reinforcement, but then in terms of avoiding situations where you don't have resources and means, you could go the negative reinforcement end.
Yeah. And the same thing with you start thinking about what behaviors in your life are you doing that you don't want to do, but you do it to escape, avoid a consequence. And one is, say, paying your electric bill, your credit card bill every month by, say, it's the 15th, which is tomorrow. So I just know I have a big bill due every 15th month. So my behavior of paying that bill is negatively reinforced every month. And it's because I'm trying to escape, avoid a penalty charge. I don't want to spend more. I don't want to give my money away just on, I'd rather it go to my animals.
Or having your electric shut off.
Right. Right. Exactly. So there's escape avoidance everywhere. And I gave the example the other day. I'm sitting on my deck working on the computer on a nice sunny 72-degree afternoon, and it starts raining. The behavior of me sitting on my deck is positively punished. So my behavior, boom, decreased because something was added. Raindrops falling. I don't mind it falling on my head. But I do mind it falling on my computer. So my behavior of sitting on the deck was positively punished because the rain was added, and the behavior of me going in the house was negatively reinforced. Escape avoidance behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what we're getting at, the take home here, is that there are aversive stimuli everywhere. They exist all over the place, and we need to be able to navigate them to have successful lives. And the same is true for our animals. So if people don't necessarily have a certain skill set or an ability to navigate those aversive stimuli, their life is going to be much more difficult. And that's why we teach how to deal with those things and how to cope with them. And that right there is the importance of negative reinforcement. And I think if we were going to talk a little bit more about desensitization, you're using negative reinforcement in there. There's a certain, and you have to be very strategic, obviously, when you're using desense, because there's a certain threshold, a certain point that you want to pull that stimulus away before your learner, exceeds their threshold, right? So you're using negative reinforcement. There's a stimulus here that is undesired, or maybe it's even something, a fear, like with a phobia. And you're doing exposure because that thing is there. It exists. We're recognizing that it's valuable to be able to teach this person or animal how to get away from it or how to cope with it. It's not something that we've arbitrarily introduced into our training package, right?
Right.
So we teach how to deal with that, but we have to monitor their behavior very closely and pull that stimulus before we hit that certain point.
Well, and your beautiful cat sitting back there in the window, who I'm watching walk around, reminded me the other day when we were on the phone, an example happened when we were on the phone, and you're like, see, and it was with your dog when your dad came over. It was beautiful because so you can see, hear, smell behavior, and I tell people this all the time. I couldn't see what was going on the phone with you, but I heard behavior happen on the phone. Do you want to describe what happened on the phone the other day with your dog? Because it was like perfect timing, and it was the effective use of negative reinforcement.
So my dog, Olivia, has not a dislike, but a fear of men. And she has been around both my father and my brother for 2, maybe almost 3 years at this point, and still is very uneasy when they are over. So my dad came over while we were on the phone the other day, and she heard him knock at the door, start to come in the house. She barked, and she took herself downstairs to an area where she has sort of like a safe space. So, but teaching that, we would use I did use negative reinforcement. So if a man is the aversive stimulus for Olivia, using negative reinforcement for the behavior of her walking away or going to a safe space, she's able to literally to get away from that stimulus. So it was like perfect timing that that happened, and she was able to escape, avoid that stimulus. And now at the same time, I've also done a lot of work with her on the exposure end and the tolerance end of, hey, dad's here, or hey, Nicholas is here, and then giving her treats and her tolerating being around them within the same environment, but she still always has that mechanism for escape. So that if we cross her threshold of what's too much, she's able to go to a different room. And even that had to be taught, right? That had to be taught using negative reinforcement. She didn't know to just go to this area. I had to prompt her initially to do that, but now she obviously has that skill.
And I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was great. And then I know we talked, because I was sitting there thinking about, all right, what's a good example of where I use negative reinforcement? And it was with Inyo, the Harris Hawk. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so there's this Harris Hawk that I was working with, and he would show signs of being nervous whenever anybody entered his enclosure. We need to get into the enclosure. That's the homework analogy. We have to get into that enclosure to feed, pull old food, give fresh water, change out the old water, clean the enclosure for the health of the animal. So I'm like, all right, it's clear that this animal is not comfortable with us walking in the enclosure. As soon as we did, boom, he would leave his perch and start flying in circles around the enclosure. So there was this long perch across his enclosure. One was a green platform right in front of us as soon as we'd walk in. Just to the left of that was, let's just call it a blue area of his perch. And then down at the end of his perch, which was the furthest point away from people entering the enclosure, was a green perch. So we got green platform, blue perch, green perch down at the end. So I said to two people at the time that were training under me, I said, we have to get in here. And this is going to happen for the rest of this bird's life. So it can either be a negative experience and a stressful experience for the rest of his life, or we could incorporate choice and give him choices in how to manage and control his future. So I said, let's set contingencies on those three areas. The green platform in front of him, we're going to teach him that means keep coming. You're moving, keep moving forward. If he steps off to the blue perch to the left, it means stay inside, but stop. And if he flies down to the green perch at the end, let's put the contingency that means remove yourself. So if you've ever worked with a Harris Hawk, I would love to have one. I salivate when I see them because they're so quirky and quick to pick up on things. So we started entering the enclosure and setting up those contingencies. We'd take a couple steps in, boom, he'd step off of that green platform to the blue, which I knew was going to happen because that means he's starting to get away from us. So that means stop. So we would all just sit there and stop. And then he flies back to the green platform when he's more comfortable. So we started moving again. And when we moved further, he flew as far away from us as possible, that negative reinforcement, that green perch at the end, we would remove ourselves. He started understanding those contingencies. And I have this all on video over a period of a couple of weeks. And it actually makes me cry every time I watch it, because one of the things that makes me cry is like beautiful art. And that's exactly what I saw in front of me. Empowering the hell out of this Harris Hawk. And the more we did this, it also provided so much mental stimulation for this bird that you would see him start to jump on the green platform, step on the blue perch, on the platform, on the perch. And I saw him going down to that leave perch less and less. And you saw him start to be empowered because he had more choice and control and over his environment, management over his environment. And it was for his better health.
I love that. When you told me that the other day, I was like, that's so cool. It's exactly what you want to see, right? We're not using, negative reinforcement long-term with the thought being, oh, this animal can just send me out of the cage whenever it likes. You're also building its tolerance to you. And then through training, as you say all the time, you're developing that relationship, and then you stop being an aversive stimulus. That the animal or the person learns, like, hey, this person is consistent and predictable, and I have, choice and some control here, and interacting with them isn't so bad. So it's awesome when you put the work in, and then you see obviously the benefit when things work out so nicely.
Yeah, and that is the reinforcer behind why I continue to do what I do. And so many times, Samantha, I hear in my line of work, man, you must be so patient. And I'm like, not really. I'm not a really
I get it
patient.
all the time too. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I am at work.
Yeah, you are at work.
I am at work. I'm very, very patient. When I used to work in different environments where I would work like shifts, I remember just saying to myself, all right, I've got 8 hours to get this behavior. I've got 8 hours to get this behavior, and that's my goal. And that's I don't care if it takes me all 8. And that's what's going to happen.
I guess it's the love of the work that we do. You know what I mean? Empowering children, people, empowering animals. And when people tell me you must be so patient, I sit there and think, no, I would not consider myself a patient person. But when I'm working on a behavior, the reinforcer for me to continue to do what I'm doing is I'm usually breaking it down in such small steps. And I've been trained and educated to watch for these small steps called shaping towards these target behaviors. Boom, that's my reinforcer. Boom, that's my reinforcer behind why I can, because I'm seeing those changes. And the reason I keep mentioning this to people is because a lot of times I think people just get frustrated and they say, I don't have the patience for this. And it's because they're taking too big of steps. The learner, as you're teaching me to say, the learner isn't understanding what's going on in your head. It's behaving based on what you're doing, and your steps may be too big for that communication to get through.
Uh-huh.
So when you break them down, and I start to see, if I'm trying to get a parrot to let me trim its toenails, and I see that one foot or that one toe move, bam! I'm like, that right there, you just did it. Reinforce, and it's for the better good of the welfare of everything.
Absolutely. I love all the, when you post for the, it's called husbandry, right? Like when animals participate in their healthcare.
Yes.
That's so critical. I mean, I worked with a lot of kids and adults with that in terms of tolerating going to doctor's appointments, lab work, going to the dentist, all that kind of stuff that we, again, recognize as important and that they need to be able to do for their well-being.
Yeah. We had an RBT volunteering for us for, I would say, at least a year. Loved working with her, having, that experience in the Animal Behavior Center every day. And she told me, but she didn't tell me until afterwards. And I was like, wow, that is so cool that, and it was with Milo, the mini pig. She was watching how I was teaching to trim his hooves, teaching him to stay calm, comfortable, and have this be a pleasant experience. And he would get Cheerios in certain amounts based on what behavior I was getting. And if you've ever trimmed a pig's hooves, you're taking clippers that look like this.
I have not. I've seen you do this.
Yeah. So you're taking clippers like this and coming down on a hoof. And a lot of times the handle's coming like this on the other end. The force that I have to use on that handle is sometimes I have to take two hands and push my weight down onto it, and it'll be a loud boom. So I'm like, all right, Milo's hooves have never been trimmed, so there's no history of reinforcement here. So I need to start training him. I've got a fresh mind in front of me. I can either push him too far and have this be an aversive experience, or I could really break it down and have this be a positive experience. So I started with foot targets, staying still, because I'm thinking of the end behavior and working backwards. Like, I'm not going to walk in and just go boom and get this big chunk. It's probably going to scare the daylights out of him. And he's sitting 4 feet high on a table in front of me. So he's probably going to bolt and jump off the edge of that table. So I had to teach him to climb a ramp. I had to do all that stuff before. But the end goal was boom, this, and have it be a pleasant experience. So this RBT was watching me do this, and I'll skip ahead many of what I did, but one of the things I did before I made the clip was, let's say, here's his hooves, here's my clippers, bridge, deliver, reinforcer, bridge, deliver, reinforcer. And then this just got harder and harder until it mimicked the boom, you know what I mean? And then it would be bam, deliver 3 reinforcers, bam, deliver 3 reinforcers. And then the cue, he knew this was a cue. Instead of this being an aversive to run, a cue to run, this was boom, now I'm getting 3 Cheerios instead of 1. You know? So this RBT was watching me, and then she came back the next week and she goes, do you know that watching you trim Milo's hooves helped me teach a child to let me cut his fingernails?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, that is just a bonus on top of why I do what I do.
That's awesome. I had a similar situation with haircuts and working with some of the adult men that I used to work with, and they had, sensory issues for haircuts. So we would practice. I got clippers and showed them the clippers, turn the clippers on, bring the clippers closer. Again, allowing escape through appropriate mechanisms. So if they were like, nah, I'm good, and they wanted to get up and walk away, that's fine, as long as I wasn't seeing the challenging behaviors that we would see during haircuts. So we would work on that. And then I had an individual that was nonverbal come to, and he engaged in self-injurious behavior. He would hit himself in the head, but he came to me and he went like this to his head. And at first I thought he was engaging in SIB, but it wasn't nearly as hard as usual. So I looked at him, and he looked at me, very pointedly looked at me, and went like this. And he was actually requesting a haircut. So I was like, oh my God, that was really, that was really cool. So somebody had commented and asked for an example where the aversive stimulus became unaversive or desired. And someone else had said, like, you gave an example already with your hawk example, which you did. But for people that's an example that I have, where this individual used to avoid, run away from getting his haircuts. He would engage in all sorts of challenging behaviors during the haircut. And then it turns around where he was coming to me to ask to have his haircut.
Love it. Love it. And that's, I would say, a similar analogy to that was from when I started working with the red ruff lemur. I needed to see what baseline looked like. So I picked up the crate outside of the enclosure. Boom. I was like, yep, I heard what had happened. I need to see where I can start, where I can begin. I want to begin where the animal's comfortable. So right here just showed me, not here. Do not do this again. Or we're going to be training undesired behaviors. So I backed the crate off. And then now, when I take the crate in, after a week of training, I take the crate in. This is what I did last night. Sat it on the table. Boom, boom. Lemur was sitting there right in front of it. And I was like, we're on the right path. And it's not just me on the right path. it's that animal, it's that child. We are on the right path together in learning and helping. And that's how, you know, the animals that I work with are my best teachers. No two are the same. So I don't walk in assuming that I'm going to be able to do this with this animal just because it's a red ruff lemur, because that red ruff lemur is going to be totally different than this one standing in front of me.
Yeah, it's the same with people.
Yep. So, okay. Is there anything, we're coming up on the hour, is there anything else we wanted to talk about? I know somebody mentioned something, Maggie, and I'm going to address it. Or do we want to address this now? I just didn't know if we wanted to start talking about this topic, aggression treatment, constructional aggression treatment. I know it's been brought up before.
I mean, I'm not familiar with that at all. That's
okay. I've just been introduced to it lately, and that's the one. And I've heard a little bit about it, but I just need to know more about it before I can talk about it. And it's not something that I'm familiar with.
I think it's funny that the acronym is CAT, and it's a
yeah. There's cat and there's bat.
It's a dog training. That's outside of my expertise. That's your area there, Laura.
Yeah. And I just think that it's gonna take us into another hour if we start talking about that. But I do want to say, I'm just looking at my notes from when we talked the other day. So I guess, is there anything else you wanted to say about this topic? I mean, the most important thing I think is hopefully in people walking away from this is that they understand management through teaching the learner choice.
Yeah. Hopefully, if people can take away from this that you hear negative reinforcement, and that does not mean anything bad. And when we talked on the phone, so we had said people hear reinforcement, and oh great, that's awesome. Is it if you're reinforcing an undesired behavior? So it's not just that reinforcement's good, right? Reinforcement and punishment aren't good or bad. They're just principles. Either behavior is going up or behavior is going down. And ideally, you want good behavior to increase and undesired behavior to decrease. But it's all in how you use these things. So if people could take away that, things just because it may sound a certain way, that's not necessarily means that it's good or bad. So to think about what negative and positive and reinforcement and punishment mean, and then also that the world is full of aversive stimuli. So it's important that we teach how to escape these things appropriately, how to tolerate these things, how to negotiate. Really, like I like to think of negative reinforcement in a way as negotiation. Like I'm teaching somebody to manage something, and they need to say like, okay, this amount of this is okay, but that amount's not, right? So you're teaching that, and I think that's the takeaways there are what we've been talking about. It's important to recognize that negative reinforcement absolutely has a place in our training, and you have to be cautious. And like we talked about the other day, Laura, I think keeping an eye on the bigger message, like what's your end goal? What are you doing here? Are you benefiting the person, the animal? And like if you're doing something right or wrong. So even if you want to get all caught up in the technicality of terms and things, at the end of the day, when you're working with a person or animal, like if what you're doing is in the best interest of that person or animal, and that's keep that at the forefront.
Yep, and that's an important takeaway. That was really important because you and I started getting into the nitty gritty of a situation, and we're like, and you brought up, are you on the right path? Are you doing what's best? And we do the best with what we know. So never stop learning. Never stop knowing how to do better.
I love it. I love it.
So, Samantha, I want to thank you so much for coming on again. I appreciate you. I always love talking to you. And I know if you're up for it, maybe if you would be interested in coming in for a podcast interview in the membership.
I'm down. It's very mutual. It may have started as me running across the field, but it's a mutual relationship at this point.
Okay, so for those of you that follow the work that we do, Samantha, do you want anybody getting in touch with you? I forgot to ask you that. I didn't know if
LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect with me, LinkedIn is the way to go.
Yep, and I know that's where to find you. So for those of you that have watched, thank you. I know negative reinforcement was a topic of one of our recent podcasts in our membership, our online memberships. We also have I lost my graphics. We also have our level 1 and level 2 memberships where you can find on our website that teach people through live streaming, understanding, working with animals. We also have our projects, which are species specific. We also have our webinars. All of that you can find on our website at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Samantha, good seeing you.
You too, Laura. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, take care, everybody.